This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Thank you all the Torah Anytime listeners. Thank the Chacham Yosef Yafa for recording. Hashem should give you only beracha. This year is Nishmat Miriam Bat Shaul, Yosef ben Avraham, and Yaakov ben Malka. This year is a for Shalema, Sarah Bat Rachel. And here Nishmat, a person who passed away 2 days ago. His name was, what was his name? I forgot his name. Yifrach ben Yael. Hashem should give him B'ezrat Hashem Eliyah Neshama Al Mala Mala Began Eden. And this year is also a schut for Zivu Hagun, Avram Chaim ben Tzipora. Whoever wants to add their names, please email me, Yaakov Rahimi at gmail.com. But in this Parsha, we learn a tremendous lesson to live as a Jew. Very fundamental lesson. Avraham Avinu, in this Parsha, Hashem tells him, V'yom Hashem el Avram, Lech lecha ma'artzecha. Move away from the land that you're from the actual karka, the actual real estate, from the country, and move away from the birthplace that you grew up in, and from the house of your father. To the land I'm going to give you, which is Eretz Canaan. One of Avraham Avinu's many nisyanot, we know Avraham Avinu had 10 tests. This was the first test. This was the test of Avraham Avinu. Hashem told Avraham Avinu, although you grew up in a certain place, although you got used to a certain mentality, although you're around people that you're close with, which could be also family, but with Avraham Avinu is talking about family. But sometimes, or many times in life, whether it's a whole life picture or sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes a person has to learn to detach himself from the situation and atmosphere that he or she is in order to serve God, to serve Hashem properly. Over here, Hashem tells Avraham Avinu, the first test, and Avraham Avinu was the first Jew. The first fundamental thing you got to know, Lech lecha, go away, move on, detach yourself from bad atmosphere. Detach yourself from bad influence. A Jew, in order to serve Hashem properly, has to be strong enough. The willpower, the bechira to want to do good, the desire to want to serve Hashem has to have a strong foundation and strong enough to have the power and to detach from people that influence in the wrong way. To move away from even the people that are closest to you to a certain degree in order to serve Hashem properly. It's not easy. It's the first test Hashem gave Avraham Avinu. To move away from the land you grew up in, from your own family, from the house you grew up in, the mentality, the people, the language. But yes, if you want to serve Hashem properly, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Avraham Avinu, Lech lecha, move away. A person has to learn to detach himself sometimes in order to serve Hashem properly. Let's say a person wants to get better, to get closer to Hashem. But the friends next to him that he's close with are influencing the wrong way. They're taking him to the movies. They're taking him to party and do very bad things, very bad vacations. Or let's say they go to certain restaurants that are 100% kosher. Or let's say they go to kosher restaurants, but they don't wash their hands and say Birkat Hamazon. Every person on their own level, depends on where they're holding, they can have a bad influence or good influence from their friends. If a person feels he's ready to grow, but his friends are influencing the wrong way just being around him, it's a test. That's called a nisayon. And over here, this week's Parsha, Hashem taught us. You want to serve Hashem properly on a daily basis, weekly basis, yearly basis, always be ready. Always be on your tippy toes to be ready to detach and move on and move forward in order to serve Hashem. Even from something that you got used to, although it's hard, that's what you were created for. A Jew always has to be ready to move forward and be strong, to detach himself from the situations that are influencing the wrong way. Let's say a person lives in a certain city. In his younger years, he wasn't so religious. But now as he's growing up, he discovered a Chabad down the block, and he starts learning Torah. He goes to yeshiva, and he's getting higher in spirituality, more and more religious and observant and listening to Torah and mitzvot. And then he notices, or she notices, that the area next to them is not a good influence. They want to keep Shabbat. Everyone around them doesn't keep Shabbat. They want to keep kosher. No one around them keep kosher. And it's very hard to live like that. That person in this Parsha teaches us, Lech lecha, move on. You got to make the move. Or let's say on a daily basis, sometimes you're sitting around people that are talking Lashon Hara, but you're close with them. They're your family. They're your best friends. But you know it's wrong to listen to Lashon Hara. Says the Chafetz Chaim, by the way, in Sefer Chafetz Chaim, a person has to literally get up and move away from the circle. Or at least put your fingers in your ears like the Gemara in Ketubot says, not to listen to Lashon Hara. Although it looks disrespectful, although it's uncomfortable, but lech lecha, in order to serve Hashem properly, you always have to be ready to leave, to move, to run, to detach, to disconnect from certain people and areas that influence you, not to follow the ways of Hashem. And that is the first test Hashem gave Avraham Avinu. Rabbeinu Bechaya writes a tremendous lesson. He says the word lech lecha comes from the word lichluch. How do you say dirt in Hebrew? Lichluch. And Rabbeinu Bechaya says how influence works. He says, imagine a person walks into a place where they shecht a lot of animals. Or let's say a person walks into a factory where they make leather. Now, such places have a really, really bad smell. So even if a person says, oh, I don't want to smell that bad smell, automatically when you walk in, you can scream all day, I don't want to smell, I don't want to smell. Automatically you're going to smell because you're around an area that's polluted with a bad odor of blood, or let's say the skin of an animal where they make the leather. And even when you leave the factory, your jacket and your begadim, your clothes are still going to smell like the place you just walked into, even though it's not by your choice. You don't want to smell bad like the blood or like the skin of the leather of the factory. But because you walked in, whether you like it or not, the reality is it may affect your clothing. Now you're going to smell like that odor inside the factory. And it goes the other way too. Let's say a person walks into a room of bisamim. He walks into a store that sells cologne, that has very good smells and all those interesting different candles that bring out like a nice, good smell in the atmosphere, in the air. A person can say, I don't want to smell like it. But automatically when you walk into a store that's full of perfume and has the good smells, it's going to go on your clothing and it has an effect on you. When you leave, you're going to smell like those awesome perfumes, the good smells inside the store. The way influence works in the world, says Rabbeinu Bechaya, influence is not a theory, influence is a reality of life. If you're around people that don't serve Hashem, it will make an effect to you to a certain level. Small, some people it's bigger, makes a bigger effect, some makes a smaller effect, but it makes an effect. You're around people that are good people, whether you like it or not, they're going to rub off on you, and it's going to make a good effect on you. Some people have a lot of good effects, some people have a small effect. In this week's Parsha, we learned that with Avraham and Lot. Lot was not a good person. Rashi brings down a few times, he calls him Arasha. Although the Midrashim, they say Lot was a good guy. That's a different topic by itself. But over here, Rashi brings down that Lot was Arasha. Lot learned from Avraham Avinu because he hung out with Avraham Avinu, who was a great tzaddik. What did Lot learn from Avraham Avinu, even though Lot himself was a Rasha? Lot learned how to host guests. See, even while he was in Sodom, and Sodom was a terrible place, just to give you one example. The Midrash brings down, and some Mefashim commentaries say that it was actually Lot's daughter. There was a girl, the Midrash brings down, that she saw a poor person that needed bread. And she went and she gave him bread. You see a poor guy, a homeless guy, and you have bread to give him, you give him bread. Or even if you don't have, go out of your way to make sure to help other people, the needy. When Anshe Sodom, when the population of the city of the country Sodom saw that this girl did an act of kindness, an act of chesed, they hated good things. They hated kindness. They hated righteousness so badly. They despised good people so badly. They went and they killed this girl. But how did they kill her? Like the worst terrorist organization ever. They put honey around this girl. They tied her up and they put honey around her. And then they put her next to bees. So she dies from all the bees biting her. That's what the Midrash brings down. Anshe Sodom, and this is Parsha, we learn about them, were horrible people. Not only did they not do good, not only did they despise good people, but they went out of their way to destroy good people. Does this not sound familiar a little bit in America as we speak? A person has to be careful. Lot was next to Avraham Avinu. He grew up with Avraham Avinu. So even though he himself was a Rasha, but he learned some good things from him. What did he learn? In Sodom, it says over there that where people were knocking on the door, Ochim, there were guests, or officially later we discovered there were Malachim, there were angels. But Lot at the time, thought they were regular human beings. They were looking for a place to, lodge. They were looking for a hotel to stay for the night because they had to sleep somewhere. They're on the way. So Lot brought them inside their house. And over there, the Midrashim bring down that Lot put himself in danger to host guests. Because remember, this is Sodom, where if you do good things and you do acts of kindness, including hosting guests, you're going to be killed and screamed at and shamed at. But Lot still did it. He went out of his way. He was Musar Nefesh. He put his life on the line in order to host guests. Like the Midrashim brings down, Rashi brings down for the Midrash, the Lot told the guests, you go in and then he went out in order to protect the guest. There are many midrashim what's going on over there. Where did Lot, who was a rasha, where did he pick up this good midah in him? Where did he pick up this good trait in order to respect guests so much and go out of your way to put your life on the line to make sure to host guests? Where did he learn how to be such a big Baal Chesed when he really is a rasha? The answer is, he hung out next to Avraham Avinu. And because he hung out next to Avraham Avinu, automatically, when you're next to such a good person, that tzaddik, his actions, the way he talks, the way he looks, the way he walks, the way he eats, the way he breathes, the way he wakes up, the way he goes to sleep, all these things, when you're next to that tzaddik, makes an effect in a person. And it rubs on that person whether he likes it or not. Which is why in this 6th Parsha, Hashem tells Avraham Avinu, Lech lecha, even though Avraham Avinu was the king of Kiruv. Remember, Avraham Avinu was Mekarev so many people. He brought him under the Confess Shechina, he brought him, he made him Jewish. But still, when the time came to leave, when it was time to leave his position, to leave the place that he grew up in, it was the right time, and Hashem told him, even though you're a big rabbi, even though you're doing so many good things, Lech lecha, right now for your sake, you have to leave. Rabatai, that's a tremendous nisayon. That's a tremendous test. And like Rabbi Chaim Brisker says, yes, in this week's parasha, he says, we know Hashem told Avraham Avinu, like we said, to leave the country that he grew up in. He says, imagine Hashem tells you to move. And then he tells you, not only does Hashem tell you to move, but he promises you, when you move, I'm going to make sure you have children, I'm going to make sure you be wealthy, you're going to have a huge nation coming out of you. Says Rabbi Chaim Brisker, what's the big deal? Why was it even a test for Avraham Avinu to leave his country and the place he grew up in to go to Eretz Canaan, if Hashem told him literally to move out, and he also guaranteed him that he's going to get many prizes, children, wealth, family? What's the big deal? You move in a second. If Hashem right now, let's say right now a person reaches a level of Nevuah prophecy where Hashem tells you, if you move right now to Alaska, I'll make you a multi-millionaire. Any person will move in a second. Over here, Avraham Avinu, Hashem told him to move. So of course he moved. Not only that, Hashem told him to move personally, and he told him you're going to be wealthy, and you're going to have a family, you're going to have a huge nation. So of course Avraham Avinu is going to move out. So what was the big deal? Why do we call this a test? This is a piece of cake. So Rabbi Chaim Brisker answers beautifully. He says, Rabotai, remember, Avraham Avinu fought the whole world for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Avraham Avinu made sure that everybody knows about God, and he taught them about God, and he taught them about Hashem, and about the stars, and who created the stars, and the moon, and the sun. He went out of his way. He put his life on the line to make sure others also know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a lifelong career that Avraham Avinu worked so hard. He was a well-known person at the time. Everybody knew Avraham Avinu. Then Hashem tells him, Lech lecha, move out. Move out, says Avraham Avinu. But what do you mean? Hashem, I'm doing a service that you want me to do. You want me to bring Jews back to Hashem? I'm doing your tzivur, your commandment. You want me to move out? Meaning Avraham Avinu's test wasn't for himself. His test was, Hashem, I don't understand what you want from me. It looks like almost like a contradiction, because I'm only here for spirituality. I built such a huge tent in order to bring so many Jews back to Hashem. I'm such a big rabbi, and I'm doing all this for Torah, mitzvot, and for the sake of Hashem, and now you're telling me to move. How does this make any sense? So it was a very big test for Avraham, because in his mind, which is a very, very hard test, in his mind, he doesn't understand the calculations of God. Hashem, why would you want me to move? I'm bringing so many children back to you to serve you, and you still want me to move. Says Rabbi Chaim Brisker, that was the test of Lech Lecha. Hashem wanted to tell Avraham Avinu that sometimes in life, even though inside the spirituality world, you're doing great and you're doing major things, but even there, Hashem is going to put you through a test to tell you, Lech Lecha, right now for yourself, it's time to move out. And Avraham Avinu passed the test. He didn't ask any questions from Hashem. He didn't ask him exactly where am I going, how is it going to happen, how is it going to work out, how long am I going to be on the road. He just kept his mouth quiet and he listened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even though Avraham Avinu in his mind was such a contradiction, but he was such a tzaddik, he had such emunah, and he says, Hashem, I'm not asking any questions. Even this is not about me, it's about spirituality, because I'm bringing Jews back to Hashem, and you still want me to move? I'm still not asking any questions. You want me to move? I'm moving. That's a very high level of a person that serves Hashem only for the sake of serving Hashem. A person who does mitzvot only for the sake of listening to Hashem, who said to do the mitzvot. Not to do a mitzvah for a reward. Not to do a mitzvah because this is going to happen and that's going to happen. No. to do a mitzvah for the sake of doing a mitzvah because Hashem sent him to do it. So if on Monday Hashem told Avraham Avinu to do kiruv, and on Tuesday he told him, stop to kiruv, move out of the country, Avraham Avinu listened. Because to him, it's not about what will happen. It's about what do I have to do. I got to listen to God. So whatever he tells me, I do. But that's a tremendous test. I want to tell you a story with the Gaon Mavina, just to bring the point home. The Gaon Mavina, they bring down the one time, remember, in Europe, there was always a shortage of etogim. One year, the story goes, I heard this from Moshe Shtarmach. In Vilna, they had no etogim. For Sukkot came Sukkot, you need dalmidim. And there was no etogim, there was a shortage. So his Talmidim, the Gaon Mavina's Talmidim said, no matter what, we're going to make sure our rabbi gets an etog. So they went around and they searched, and they found some guy, I think it was somewhere in Ukraine. They heard about this guy that has an etog. They came and they knocked on his door. And he told me, you want the etog? We'll buy it off you. This Jew said, there's no way I'm selling the etog. I want to do the mitzvah myself. I told him, wait a minute. It's for the Gadol Adar, the Gaon Mavina. This Jew got excited. The Gaon Mavina wants an etog. And he said, of course. He gave them the etog. He sold it to them. But he told them, I want to give it to you in one condition. The Jew that gave the etog to the students of the Gaon Mavina told them, I want to give it to you, but with one condition. That all the schar, all the reward, all the zechuyot, all the merits that come out of the mitzvah when the Gaon Mavina shakes the etog with the lulav, I want to take that reward in Olam Haba. And the student said, okay, no problem, we have a deal. They go back to the Gaon Mavina, they give him the etog, and they tell him, but we made maybe one small mistake without asking you. We should have asked you before, but we couldn't. This person had one condition. That all the zechuyot and all the reward that comes out of this mitzvah, when you shake the etog, goes to him, not to you. The Gaon Mavina, the story goes, was so happy and he was smiling. And they asked him, Rabbi, why are you smiling? He says, my whole life I was waiting to Hashem to please give me the opportunity to do at least one mitzvah without getting any reward for it. I always wanted to do mitzvot, at least one, where I know I'm not getting any schar for. I just want to do the mitzvah for the sake of doing the mitzvah. I just want to do the mitzvah, the commandment, for the sake of serving Hashem and listening to Hashem without getting any benefits from it. That's why I'm happy, says the Gaon Mavina. But that's a tremendous story. A person, it's a high level, but it's something a person needs to be sho'ef. A person wants to strive to be like that. Serve Hashem for the sake of serving Hashem. Is there a reward? Yes. Is there benefits? Yes. But that's not why we do mitzvot. We do mitzvot because we want to listen to God. We want to listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what we learn from this week's Parsha. Hashem told Avraham Avinu, Lech Lecha. And it was a very hard test because Avraham Avinu grew up in this place and he has family. He didn't ask any questions. If it means right now the right thing for me is to move on. If I'm getting influenced the wrong way, says Avraham Avinu, the first Jew, you got to be ready to detach. A Jew has to be strong, to always be ready to move on if the situation next time is not good. Because priority one is serving God. Priority one is serving Hashem. Lesson number 2. What was the big test for Avraham Avinu? If Hashem told him to move, and he also told him you'll be wealthy wherever you move, you're going to have a big family, you're going to have children. So what was a big deal for Avraham Avinu to move? The answer is Avraham Avinu wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about Torah mitzvot, because at the time he was serving Hashem very well. He brought many people to start serving Hashem. And he knew if he's going to move out, he's not going to be able to continue. And still Hashem told him to move out, and he still didn't ask any questions. Because even when it comes to spirituality, even when it comes to Torah and mitzvot, if you do it for the sake of Hashem, even though it doesn't make any sense, you still do it. That's why he moved out. And what we learn from Rabbi Chaim Brisker is sometimes a person has to have in mind, why do I do mitzvot? Do I do it to get a benefit, to get a reward, or do I do it for the sake of listening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu?
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.